sanctuary before all you got here, and I lost, before I get started, I lost a set of car keys. And could you do me a favor and just look around where you are and see if there's any car keys where you're looking? Just look where you are, see if you see any car keys. Okay, you can stop now. Actually, that's not true. I'm sorry, I just wanted to do it as a little exercise. Because it shows me how willing and able you are to look for something that's lost. I didn't actually use my car keys, but I just wanted to use this as an immediate example of, wow, every single person here was willing to help and look for a lost set of car keys. So thank you for that. I'll come back to that in a moment. Now I want to talk about lost sheep, and the lost sheep that I think are in every community. And first, though, we need to know that in this story that Jesus talks about the sheep that gets lost, and the shepherd leaves the 99 sheep to go and find that lost sheep. We need to know something about sheep. Here's what I understand about sheep. They are nearsighted, which means they can only see things that are very close to them. They cannot see very far away. And they are ferocious eaters. They love to eat. They eat nonstop. They eat grass and anything nonstop. So the way that sheep usually get lost is because their heads are down and they're eating, and they just follow the grass or the crop or whatever they're eating. So if there's a group of, the shepherd and the flock are here, and he's kind of leading them this way, and they're eating in this area. But there's a sheep in the back who finds some grass that goes in this area. His head's down, and her head's down, and they're just eating until they finally look, and because they're nearsighted, they can't see very far, and they look up, and they're totally separated from the rest of the sheep. And they don't know how to get back, and they can't see very far. I think that's a great image of how you and I can get lost, and how any of the lost sheep in our community have become lost. Here's what I mean by that. And this is from my background again as a pastoral counselor, as a spiritual director. The way I see people getting lost is their heads are down and they're just focusing on whether they're nearsighted, they're only focused on what's immediately in front of them, and they're trying to fill some kind of need. They're hungry and they keep feeding themselves with something. It's not necessarily the right thing. I'll talk about that in a second. And then all of a sudden they wake up and how did this happen? Nobody wants to get lost. If you think about a marriage or a family that ends up in some kind of crisis, people feel lost, they feel disconnected from one another over time. Nobody set out in that marriage or in that family to become disconnected. They didn't say, 5 years from now I'd like to be really disconnected from one another and be in conflict. Of course not. But they had their heads down and they were focusing on something very immediate. Maybe it was, work, maybe it was maybe in the worst case scenario, it could be kind of some kind of an addiction. They could be focusing on just feeding themselves with some kind of an addiction. And all of a sudden, after a number of years, they kind of look up and they're all disconnected from one another. That's when they call people like me that do counseling. And we help them find their way back to one another.
What is it?
People can get lost in lots of different ways. But they get when we talk a lot about wellness in our program, wellness, we define wellness as the ability to delay gratification. I'll put it the other way. Most of the times you and I get lost and get in trouble in life, it's because we're seeking immediate gratification. We're trying to go for some immediate fix, some immediate high, some immediate satisfaction. You think of young children, right? That the whole raising of children and maturing children is to help them move from, immediate gratification to be learning to be patient, learning to delay gratification, learning to have a longer vision so that they understand that their choices they make serve a longer goal. Well, the same is true for us. If we're just feeding our immediate needs, like that sheep, we will eventually get lost. And so we have lots of lost people. You and I can be lost if we're not careful. And so we need each other to support one another and reach out to one another. If you experience someone in your own body here, the whole community, who is maybe wandering a little bit and lost, and you need to be Jesus to that person and reach out and call them and visit them and welcome them back. But then there's also lots and lots of people in every community who need what we have. What do we have in church? We have love, we have forgiveness, we have community, we have connectedness, we have meaning, we have purpose, we have fun, we have little girls that dance. Oh my goodness. People need a place where they can come and dance, where they can come and be loved, where they can find meaning and purpose and connectedness and community. We have what the world needs. But they don't necessarily know it, and we don't necessarily do a very good job of reaching out and connecting to them and find ways to bridge that gap. That's why we developed the Living Compass Wellness Ministry, because it's one way of reaching out to your community. Everybody out there is looking for a compass. They have lost their way, and a compass can help them find their way back. One more story, and then I'll kind of bring it all together. 4 or 5 years ago, I love to run, and I love to run marathons. And I was running the Green Bay Marathon, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Land of the frozen tundra, the cheesehead, the Green Bay Packers, you know that. We're so proud in Wisconsin to be known as people that wear cheese heads. It's really a wonderful. I don't know how I got associated with that. I'm running the Green Bay Marathon, and if you know anything about races, running, there's always water stations, right? An aid station, and sometimes they'll have a little food, especially in a marathon. Well, I'm running this marathon, and I get to about the 8-mile mark, come around the corner, and there's this huge Lutheran church, big ELCA Lutheran church. And they have moved, they're not worshiping, this is on a Sunday morning too. So I'm coming by the church about 10 o'clock, about the 8-mile mark, let's say, and they've stopped, they're not having a worship service inside. Instead, they've moved everybody outside. They have guitars outside, all the musicians are choir, and they have the most amazing aid and food and water station I've ever seen in all the marathons I've run. They had everything from oranges and bananas and granola bars and juices. And the music was just, they were singing, and this music was inspiring. And then they had a whole bunch of people from the church were off, we had a little prayer station. Runners could go over and get a quick blessing and lay down of hands in prayer to support them for the rest of the next 18 miles. It was the most, it gives me goosebumps just to think about it. This whole church was out there. Thousands of people were benefiting that day from their ministry that were running that marathon. And then they did something else that was amazing. So I keep running, and now I get to about the 24-mile mark. And when you run marathons, your family, often will come out and support you. But they will never be able to see you in those last 3 or 4 miles because they want to get to the finish line. So in the last, actually, paradoxically, the last 3 or 4 miles of the marathon, there's nobody around because everybody's waiting at the finish line to see people finish. So I get to the 24-mile mark, I come around the corner, and here, all the people from that church had T-shirts on that day, yellow T-shirts. It said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, from Philippians. So I come around the corner of the 24-mile mark, here's 100 people from this church, forming a line, 50 on each side in their yellow T-shirts. And we all ran through, and they high-fived us as we ran through to support us those last 2 miles. It was the most amazing thing. Now, I share that now, I'll bring it all together, I hope. That remains to be seen. But here's the point of that story. That church found a way on that morning to connect with their community in a really powerful way. What if the church had done this instead? Instead of doing what they did, what if they had put a sign in front of the church? It said, food and drink inside, all runners are welcome. How many people would have gone in and gotten the food and drink? 0. They would have been like, food, what's inside? What kind of food and drink? I don't know what's in there. Is it going to take me 10 minutes? Is it in the basement? I can't see it. What's that going to mean? I see the sign, but I'm just going to keep running because there'll be another aid station in a couple of miles. They would have not touched one runner's life that morning. What they did is they took it outside. They went to where the sheep were. They went to where the people were, and they figured out what they needed, and they served it. They served food, they served prayer, they served love, they served community, and they cheered us on. Use it as a metaphor. Every community, every church has people running, you have people running marathons by this church every day. Now, I don't believe the Salt Lake City Marathon does go by this church. But there's other kinds of marathons that we're all running each and every day. We're exhausted. The people that are lost sheep out there are exhausted. Their lives are hard. They're worn out. They're running in many different directions. And the task of the church is to decide, how do we feed them? How do we reach out? We can't just put a sign out and say, we have church inside on Sunday morning, all are welcome. I mean, that's good. We want to do that. But we got to do more than that. We got to reach out and figure out in your community, it's different in every community, what are the marathons that people are running? How do you fuel them? How do you feed them? How do you connect with them? How do you take what we have that we know is wonderful and connect it to them? I don't know the answer to that, but I know that that's the task. And that's not just the task of church growth, folks. It's the gospel. It's what Jesus invites us to do today. To look for the lost sheep as immediately as you looked for my lost keys that I made up, that little story. But guess what? The lost sheep aren't in here. So you're going to have to find ways. And I'm sure you already have ways. I'm sure you're already doing things that are serving and connecting in your community. And it's how do you do more? That's the question I'll leave you. But again, it's not just a church growth strategy. It is a gospel strategy. Because we understand, because we are lost sheep ourselves. And thank goodness, we have a Savior who never stops looking for us. And may we be a church that never stops looking for us.